Thank you so much for the opportunity. So my name is Dr. Nicholas Camboris, and I am a chiropractor and an acupuncturist. I grew up in a suburb outside of Youngstown, Ohio, and I went to Youngstown State University, where I received my bachelor's in human biology, and then I went on to chiropractic college in Kansas City, Missouri, where I received my doctorate. And then I went on to receive my diplomate degree in acupuncture. And I love alternative therapy. It gives us an opportunity to explore other methods of helping to heal our body without reaching for the needle or the pill or the knife. So the purpose of today's discussion is to help to educate and inform you on the different options that you may have and the difference between getting old and aging. Because there is a difference between the two, and there is just so much that you can do for yourselves. By the time that I'm finished with the lecture, now we're going to be here for about an hour, and I'm going to entertain any questions that you may have, but many of you may have some individual questions you may not want to bring up in front of the audience, and so I would like to invite you, if you have the need or the concern, you can visit with me in the office individually in a private room and ask me some questions. I would be happy to provide you with a complimentary time in the office to discuss some things that you may have on mind. And my assistant George in the back there. George will be happy to take down some information from you at the end of the lecture if you choose to. So, let's begin. The title of this was Making Friends with Arthritic. And what that means is trying to understand how the body works. And so everything in our life is based on performance. Everything that we do is based on how the body can perform. And the way that the body performs, I mean, coming from the way that you can concentrate, the way that you can play sports or drive a car or have a conversation, is all dependent upon how chemicals in the body will react and how the one cell to the other can communicate with each other. One cell will communicate with each other based on chemical reactions. Now, we have not billions but trillions of cells in our body. And every one of those cells need to communicate. And if there is a disruption in that communication, it creates stress in the body. And it's pretty amazing how well the body can work and the things that our Creator put within us to be able to deal with daily stressors. It's pretty amazing about the type of chemistry that happens within us. The chemical reactions that occur within our body occur through the representation of glands. There are many glands within the body that will secrete these chemicals. And these chemicals are secreted to make reactions happen within us. For example, can anybody name a gland in the body? Any one gland? Thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is an important one. Anybody know what the thyroid gland does?
Regulation metabolism.
Exactly. It has a chemical that it secretes, a primary chemical called thyroxine. And thyroxine is one of the major regulators of how our metabolism works. I mean, and some of them, just because we're sitting in this room next to the cabbage rolls that are made here, are already putting weight on. And some of us eat a whole container and we can't put an ounce on. And it's because of the distribution of the rate of thyroxine that's released within our body. Any other gland that anybody can name?
Pituitary.
Pituitary gland. That is an important one inside the brain. Another one is the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland, that's a real important one. I remember a story of a police officer on the Pennsylvania Turnpike many summers ago. Pulled over a drunk driver. And he pulled over the drunk driver and he didn't pull out his ticket book, but he pulled out his pistol and he shot the driver. So the driver was under the influence of alcohol, but what was the officer under the influence of? Exactly, his own body's chemistry. Really powerful stuff. And the adrenal gland also does another job, and its job is to secrete a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is actually one of the things that were discovered by medicine that said, hey, this is a pretty powerful hormone. This chemical can suppress inflammation and will make you feel really good when you have pain, especially arthritic pain in a joint. And it is a powerful medication, cortisone. And cortisone was discovered from our own body's material, our own body's hormone, from the cortisol. And when we're stressed, whether it's through traumatic stress or through gradual stress, like joint stress, or from famine, if you're hungry, your body will secrete this hormone cortisol, and it actually has a side effect that builds belly fat. And you might be the person that says, I tried everything and I can't seem to lose weight. And one of the next questions I'll ask is, how stressful is your life? Oh. And I hear, about all the different things going on in their life. And that's because their body won't let them lose weight. It thinks that they're hungry because for millions and millions of years, when there's an animal around that can be killed, great, we can eat it all up, but it wasn't always as easy as going to the grocery store and picking up your food. And so our bodies were trained under that stress to pack that fat on so that we have some energy to keep us alive. And so we still have those maps inside of our bodies to keep us healthy. Unfortunately now, it's doing the opposite, it's keeping us unhealthy. So keeping our stress levels down is just as important. Glands are controlled by the central nervous system. The central nervous system, what is that? Well, we've got two kinds of nervous systems in our body. The peripheral nervous system, and we have the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is everything that exits the spine. Everything that goes from the spine to our organs, to our arms, to our legs. It's the periphery. The central nervous system is made up of the brain, the brainstem, and the spinal cord. And the moment it exits the little hole on the side of the spine, now it's termed the peripheral nervous system. And we know that because it's defined very specifically when you look at this under a microscope, the type of tissue that exits. It's really interesting how the body was developed. So the central nervous system now, it's so important that this central nervous system was protected by the hardest thing that's made in our body, and that's the bone. How do we know that the central nervous system controls the glands that release the chemicals that allow us to perform the way that we do? When we were first created, we have two things that come together that make a little cell. And then that cell splits, and it splits again and again and again until it becomes a little thing that we call a mulberry. Right? That's the phase. And this little baby, the first remnant, the first thing that forms is something called a notochord. And the notochord is the remnants of the brain, the brainstem, and the spinal cord. From that, the little nerves begin to extend out and wrap around this multiple celled structure, and then little fruits begin to pop. The kidneys, the stomach, the heart, the spleen, the liver, and then muscles and bones begin to form, and then you can see what looks like a little baby. So, you know, if you want apples, you don't just throw them up and hope the tree catches them, right? It starts off as a seed, and then it sprouts and has a trunk and branches and leaves, and then the apples form. That's the same way that we're formed too. And so we know that the brain, brainstem, and spinal cord controls everything else in our body. Going back to the cortisol, you know, one of the main things that happens when we form arthritis, what the adrenal gland will do, is it will secrete its own body's cortisol. Our bodies were created so that we can control our own body's pain. And there's a lot of truth to that. But what happens is as we get involved in convenience, and I have to be careful with that because there are many instances where we need to depend on medication, especially because it's there. But sometimes you reach for it a little bit too soon. And I'm going to teach you in a moment about how to help that and how to stimulate your own body's cortisol to be released. There are 4 particular ranges of motion that we need to take our body through. Passive assisted, passive, active, and then resistant range of motion. When you do that through those stages, that's how you heal a joint, and that's how you keep a joint healthy. And that will make our own body's chemistry begin to work, and it works just perfectly. It knows what it's doing.